All right, let's go. The man sitting across from you has not blinked in 40 seconds, and you know this because you have been counting, and you have been counting because it is the only thing your hands are not doing right now. 10. The street recruit chump work and the color of your ink. What it felt like to be a member, daily life, entry level. Osaka, spring of 1987. You are 19 years old and you are standing outside a pachinko parlor on Namba's back-end strip at 10 minutes past 11 in the morning. And the reason you are standing there is that a man named Tanaka told you to stand there. And the reason you listen to Tanaka is that Tanaka is the third cousin of a man whose name you do not know yet, but whose presence you have felt in the neighborhood the way you feel a change in air pressure before the rain. You do not have a title. You are not yet anything with a name. The official organizational taxonomy of the Yamaguchi-gumi, which at the time of this moment was the largest criminal organization in Japan with a registered membership somewhere north of 23,000 affiliated individuals, does not have a box for what you are. The closest word is jun-kōsei-in asterisk, which translates roughly to associate, and which means in practice that you are standing outside a pachinko parlor waiting for a man who may or may not arrive. What you are doing is normal. What is not normal is the envelope tucked against your left ribs, inside your jacket, which contains more cash than your father made in 3 months at the print shop. The envelope is not yours to keep, you know this. The man who told you to carry it, a mid-level asterisk wakagashira asterisk, or junior lieutenant named Mori Katsuhiko, who ran 4 pachinko fronts and 2 loan operations in Nambanishi, did not say this is for you. He said don't fold it. The difference matters. You are a courier today, a warm body with a plausible face. 19-year-old boys with product gel hair and department store sneakers do not get stopped outside pachinko parlors by the National Police Agency. This is the logic. The envelope is thick enough that the man who handed it to you briefly needed both hands to pass it across. The drop is supposed to take 6 minutes, door to door. The man you are waiting for is now 14 minutes late, and the street behind you has the particular quiet of a Tuesday that knows something you do not. The question no one in this operation has a clean answer for is this. If the man never comes, do you walk away with the envelope, or do you stand here until someone tells you otherwise? And who, exactly, is going to tell you? What got out about street-level Yakuza recruitment in the late 1980s was largely shaped by 2 sources. NPA intelligence summaries declassified in the mid-1990s, and a series of investigative pieces published in Shuken Shincho that described the entry process as a formalized grooming pipeline. Troubled young men, often from broken or poor families, recruited through neighborhood contact networks, and tested first with errands before being offered any formal affiliation. That account was substantially accurate. What the accounts did not render was the waiting. Every man interviewed by researchers years later about his entry into the organization spent a disproportionate amount of time describing not violence, not ceremonies, not money, but standing in places, waiting outside things, being given incomplete instructions on purpose. The omission was not conspiratorial. The omission was structural. Standing on a street corner does not read as a power dynamic in a magazine profile. The Organized Crime Countermeasures Law, enacted by the Japanese Diet in 1992 and commonly referred to as the Bōtaihō asterisk, formally reclassified Yakuza recruitment practices as subject to civil injunction and designated the major families as shatei boryokuden asterisk, or designated violent organizations. Under this framework, street-level recruitment activity was categorized as organizational solicitation and subjected to reporting requirements that fell primarily on financial institutions and local businesses. The law's implementation was documented as a significant disruption to the informal associate pipeline. The period of adjustment between 1992 and 1995 was characterized in NPA reporting as one of structural reorganization at the sub-affiliate level. What was not said in that characterization was how many young men who had been standing outside buildings, carrying envelopes, waiting for instructions, simply kept standing there, because no one had told them the organization had changed. But the Bōtaihō resolved the legal designation. What it did not resolve was the envelope. Not that specific envelope, the one against your ribs, inside your jacket, that Tuesday in Osaka. The abstract envelope. The thing that was handed to you before anyone told you the rules, before anyone explained the hierarchy, before any ceremony or oath or formal marking. The thing handed to you that made you responsible before you understood what you were responsible to. The Yamaguchi-gumi at its post-1990's peak is estimated to have maintained somewhere between 30 and 45,000 individuals in various states of formal and informal affiliation across 33 prefectures. A significant percentage of them began the same way you did, standing outside something, waiting, holding something that wasn't theirs yet. 9. The shatei brother in name, errand boy in practice. Daily life inside a specific syndicate. Yamaguchi-gumi, 1990 structure. Kobe, 1993. You have been given a formal rank now. You are a *shatei, a younger brother in the organizational kinship model that structured every major Yakuza family. The Yamaguchi-gumi, operating from its headquarters compound in Kobe's Nada Ward, was in the early 1990s navigating the twin pressures of the Bōtaihō and the implosion of Japan's asset bubble economy, both of which had compressed traditional revenue streams and forced a restructuring of internal accountability. You have a *kyodai, an elder brother named Fujiwara, who is 31 and has a burned patch on his left forearm the size of a playing card that you have never asked about. Your daily schedule begins at 7 in the morning when you go to buy cigarettes and newspapers for Fujiwara, and it does not have a defined end time. The organizational kinship model is not a metaphor. It is the operating system. And its most important feature, the one they do not explain to you, is that brothers are not equals. The compound in Nada Ward was a compound in the architectural sense, a cluster of buildings behind a wall, the kind of structure that in any other context might be a mid-range hotel or a regional corporate campus. 3 men stood at the gate when you arrived the first morning. One of them had tattoos that started at his collar. Another carried a clipboard. The third did nothing visible except stand with a stillness that suggested he had practiced it. Fujiwara collected a weekly tribute from 6 separate businesses, 2 restaurants, a bar, a construction subcontractor, a real estate broker, and something categorized on no document you ever saw, and from that tribute paid upward, a process called *JO Chinese letter, tribute to the family, that consumed a percentage you were never given as a number but understood as roughly most of it. Your own operating budget was 12,000 yen a week in walking money, enough for cigarettes, enough for a meal at a counter you didn't need to reserve, not enough for anything that required planning. The one thing nobody in the compound could give a straight answer about was the ratio, how much went up, how much stayed, and who had calculated the cut. Academic work on Yakuza internal economics, most notably the sociological research of Kaplan and Dubrow, and later the more quantitative analyses produced by the National Research Institute of Police Science, described the tribute structure as a tiered cascade. Associate revenue flowed to shatei, who tithed upward to wakagashira, who paid to *kyodai* lieutenants, who paid to the wakagashira hosa*, who paid to the saiko-komon *, up through a hierarchy of a half-dozen formal ranks before reaching the kumichō*, the boss. The published model was structurally accurate. What it did not capture was the texture of the compression at the bottom, the way a man at the shatei level experienced the tribute not as a percentage, but as a subtraction that happened before he ever touched the money. The cash came through you, not to you. You were a point on a line, not a vessel. The internal economics of Yamaguchi-gumi sub-affiliate operations were examined in a series of prosecutorial actions between 1993 and 1997, the most significant being the Kobe District Court proceedings against 3 subsidiary *Ika subfamily operations on charges of extortion and unlicensed financial services. The proceedings produced detailed financial documentation of tribute flows at the mid-level. At the conclusion of those proceedings, the court issued findings that characterized the economic structure as a pyramid of coercive tribute. Remediation was limited to the specific defendants named. The broader organizational structure was not addressed. The financial documentation entered into court records has since been sealed under ongoing investigative exemptions. And yet the thing the pyramid model does not resolve is what happened to the men at the base of it. The court proceedings named individuals at the *wakagashira* level and above. The shatei, the younger brothers, were consistently designated in prosecutorial documents as witnesses, as dependents, as minor participants, as persons whose cooperation was being sought, which is to say they were identified primarily by their relationship to someone else. Fujiwara, the elder brother with the burned forearm, entered a cooperation arrangement with the Kobe District Prosecutor's Office in 1995. His testimony runs to 412 pages, according to available court indices. The shatei he supervised during that period, there were apparently 7 of you at various times, appear in that document a combined 4 times, always as unnamed third parties. 7 young men, across roughly 3 years, reduced to the pronoun others, in a 400-page account of the world they actually lived in. 8. The wakagashira running the street, answering to everything above it. A decision point, the moment before something irreversible. Nagoya, August 1997. You are a *wakagashira now, a junior lieutenant with 3 *shatei under you and a territory that covers 9 blocks of commercial property in Nakamura Ward, plus a piece of a loan operation running out of a currency exchange that does not officially loan money. You are 26 years old. The Yamaguchi-gumi is in a period of active territorial renegotiation with the Kodokai, a rival faction whose consolidation in H Prefecture has been visible, in the physical sense, since spring. A new business, a new face at an old corner, a car you don't recognize parked in a place where cars sit when they're watching something. Tonight you are sitting in a back room at a restaurant on Maekidori with a man named Harada, who is your direct superior, a *kyodai of the 3rd tier, and he has placed a phone on the table face down between you. The phone has been face down for 22 minutes. No one has reached for it. The question on the table, not the phone, the actual question, the one that brought you here, is whether the gray Nissan Cedric that has been parked outside the currency exchange for 2 consecutive nights belongs to the police or to the Kodokai. The answer determines everything that happens next, and nobody in this room knows it. Harada is not a large man, but he takes up a specific quality of space that has nothing to do with his size. He is 53, with reading glasses he wears on top of his head and never actually uses, and he has a habit of tapping his index finger on whatever surface is in front of him with a rhythm that is not impatient. It is deliberate. He taps 4 times, pauses, taps again. You have been watching him do this for 2 years. Tonight the rhythm is off. He tapped 3 times, then stopped entirely. The restaurant around you is closed to regular customers, the owner, a man named Aikta who has been paying tribute to the organization since 1985, has seated the kitchen staff in the front of the house with a meal they did not ask for. There are 6 people in the back room, including you. The youngest of them is watching the door. None of the 6 of you are carrying anything that would constitute a criminal charge in isolation, but the collective weight of why you are all in this room together is a different kind of arithmetic. The one thing nobody has said, because it cannot be said aloud without becoming a decision. If the Nissan is Kodokai, you need to move tonight. If it is NPA, moving tonight makes you look like you have something to move away from. The Nakamura Ward territorial dispute of 1997 produced 3 separate incident reports filed by the Nagoya Municipal Police over a 6-week period in August and September. A vehicle vandalization, a commercial property dispute complaint from the currency exchange operator, and an assault report involving 2 men who declined to provide identifying information. The reports were linked by NPA analysts and flagged as indicators of interorganizational friction in the H-I corridor. That flagging produced a surveillance increase in the Miyakidori commercial block that began, according to available records, in late September. The incident reports made no reference to any backroom meeting in August. The restaurant owner, Ikeda, was interviewed twice and stated on both occasions that his establishment was not used for any purpose other than the preparation and service of food. The Nakamura Ward territorial situation was resolved, in the institutional record, through a combination of police pressure and organizational negotiation. A formal cease activity notice was issued to 3 named businesses in the commercial corridor in October 1997. No charges were filed in connection with the August surveillance period. The NPA Organized Crime Division's annual summary for fiscal 1997 noted an increase in interorganizational tension in H-I Prefecture, classified as resolved through organizational realignment by the following fiscal year's report. The gray Nissan Cedric does not appear in any document, but the Nissan's ownership was established, eventually, not by the police, not by the organization, but by a man who used to work at the currency exchange and who mentioned it, years later, to a journalist writing about something unrelated. It belonged to a mid-level Kodokai operative named Taguchi who had been using it for routine surveillance of 3 separate operations in the ward, none of which were connected to each other except by the fact that they were all on the same list. You made a decision in that back room. You made it without knowing what you were deciding about. That decision, and the series of actions that followed it, which are not part of any public record, reorganized a 9-block commercial territory in ways that are still visible in the business registrations of Nakamura Ward today, if you know what name to look for. That is roughly 27 years of consequence, radiating from a room where nobody could answer the one question that mattered. Before we go further, if you've made it this far and you're still in the room with me, still counting the seconds, still watching the phone that nobody's touching, hit subscribe. I'm not going anywhere. Neither are you. These stories don't get easier to walk away from, and I'm not going to stop telling them. 7. The Kyodai elder brother, and what that actually costs. A famous figure's defining moment, told from inside it. Tokyo, February 1985. You are sitting 4 chairs from the left in a meeting room at a hotel in Shinjuku that has been rented under a business name that does not correspond to any registered entity. The man at the head of the table is Tauka Mitsuru, the adopted son of the legendary Yamaguchi-gumi third-generation boss Tauka Kazuo, who had died in 1981, and whose death had left the organization in a succession crisis that the public version of events greatly simplified. You are not the subject of this story. You are the senior Kyodai who gets to sit in the room where the subject of this story is happening. That distinction, who gets to be in the room, is the entire architecture of your rank, and you have been building toward it for 11 years. Tauka Mitsuru is speaking in a measured voice about organizational discipline and the importance of hierarchical integrity. And the thing that is not routine about this meeting is the man sitting at his right hand, who has not yet spoken and whose name you will not say in this account because he is still alive and has not given you permission. The succession crisis following Tauka Kazuo's death in 1981 had produced an interim leadership period during which Kumicho Dairai, an acting boss, had managed organizational affairs while formal succession was negotiated across the family's affiliate structure. By 1984, the process had compressed into a set of internal power alignments that produced, in early 1985, a formal acknowledgement of the 4th-generation leadership. The meeting you are attending is not a public ceremony. It is the meeting before the meeting, the one where the commitments are made that will allow the public ceremony to be performed without incident. There are 14 people in the room. 3 of them have flown from Osaka. 1 came from Hiroshima. The hotel staff who brought the tea set it down and left within 40 seconds. The man at the head of the table has a watch that you notice because he does not look at it. A man who does not look at his watch in a meeting like this is either completely in control of the time or has decided that the time no longer applies to him. The one thing no one in the room has a clean answer for is which of those is true. The fourth-generation succession of the Yamaguchi-gumi was documented in press coverage that focused primarily on the public ceremony and the formal announcement, both of which occurred in late 1984. Academic and journalistic accounts of the succession have generally characterized it as a relatively stable transition managed through internal negotiation. NPA surveillance records from the period, portions of which have been discussed in retrospective analytical work, describe the transition as accompanied by a significant reorganization of affiliate relationships in the Kansai and Chugoku regions. What those accounts did not capture was the texture of the pre-ceremony alignment meetings, the conversations that happen before the thing that gets reported. The 14 people in that Shinjuku hotel room are not named in any document from that period. The commitments made in that room are not in the record, but some of their consequences are visible in affiliate restructuring patterns that NPA analysts noted in their 1985 and 1986 summaries. The Yamaguchi-gumi fourth-generation leadership was formally recognized in organizational records and acknowledged in NPA designation documentation within the following fiscal year. The transition was classified by authorities as completed without significant criminal incident. In subsequent years, the organization under fourth-generation leadership expanded its financial operations into real estate investment, entertainment licensing, and construction subcontracting, particularly during the asset bubble period of 1986 through 1991. Retrospective analysis of this expansion has been conducted by multiple academic researchers and has been partially documented in Diet Committee testimony. The meeting at the Shinjuku Hotel is not mentioned in any of those analyses. And yet the man who sat at the right hand of the table, the one whose name I'm not going to give you, made a commitment in that room that shaped the next 12 years of Yamaguchi-gumi territorial organization in the Kanto region. Not through violence, through a specific verbal agreement about a specific piece of commercial real estate in Yokohama that was, at that moment, the subject of a dispute between 3 affiliate families. The agreement resolved the dispute. The resolution produced an alliance. The alliance produced revenue. The revenue, according to one retrospective account provided to a Diet Committee in 2003, was sufficient to fund the organization's legal defense costs for the better part of a decade. One verbal commitment, in a hotel room with 14 people, none of whom are named in the record. The building in Yokohama is still there. It changed hands twice in the 1990s. The current ownership structure runs through a holding company registered in 2001. 6. The asterisk saiko-komon senior advisor, and the art of being dangerous without moving. Specific historical event. The Yamaguchi-gumi War, 1985–1989. Osaka, January 27, 1985. You have just been given a formal advisory title, saiko-komon asterisk, senior counselor, and you understand what that means. You are the institutional memory of the organization, the man who knows where everything is, which is exactly why you are not the man who will be asked to do anything physical tonight. The reason tonight is different is that Tauka Kazuo's widow, Fumiko, has been maneuvering against the faction led by Yamamoto Hiroshi, who has, in the estimation of most people in the room, made the political error of moving before he had the numbers to justify moving. The Ikiwakai, Yamamoto's breakaway faction, has been formally designated as a rival organization by the Yamaguchi-gumi leadership, which is a statement with a specific operational meaning that does not need to be elaborated in polite company. You are the man who knows where things are. Tonight that knowledge makes you the most important person in the building, and the most careful. The Yama-ichi War, the conflict between the Yamaguchi-gumi and the Ikiwakai, would eventually produce, according to law enforcement tallies and journalistic accounting, a casualty figure that made the funeral homes in 3 Osaka wards run out of available dates in the same week twice. It began with the assassination of Yamamoto Hiroshi on January 27, 1985, on a street in Osaka's Namba district, by gunshot, in daylight. You were not there. You were told about it in a room. The man who told you, *wakagashira hosa*, a senior lieutenant whose name has been published in multiple accounts of this period, placed both hands flat on the table when he said it, which is the gesture that means the information is confirmed, not preliminary. The war that followed ran for 4 years. It involved at least 29 confirmed deaths by NPA count and a number of disappearances that the official count does not address. The thing nobody in the room could give a clean answer for was how long the Ikiwakai had actually been planning this. Because if they had been planning it longer than anyone thought, then there were other rooms they had been in that nobody knew about. The Yama-ichi War was extensively covered by Japanese media and has been documented in multiple academic and journalistic works on Yakuza history. The casualty figures, the timeline of major incidents, and the eventual dissolution of the Ikiwakai in 1989 are all a matter of public record. What the public record rendered less clearly was the advisory structure that managed the organizational response, the saiko-komon tier, the senior counselors whose role was to frame decisions, map consequences, and prevent the kind of reactive escalation that could produce police intervention at a level the organization couldn't absorb. The media coverage emphasized action. The advisory layer was, by design, invisible. 2 senior counselors from this period have given retrospective accounts in authorized journalistic profiles. Both accounts spend considerably more time describing what was not decided than what was. The Yama-ichi War concluded, in the official record, with the dissolution of the Ikiwakai as a designated organization in 1989, following a sustained period of police pressure that included targeted arrests of leadership figures on both sides. The NPA's Organized Crime Division characterized the resolution as a combination of enforcement action and organizational attrition. Several key Ikiwakai figures entered cooperation arrangements with prosecutors. The Yamaguchi-gumi leadership of the period was not charged in connection with the conflict. The specific incidents comprising the war's casualty record were processed as individual criminal matters, with varying outcomes. A comprehensive accounting of those proceedings has not been consolidated in a single public document. But the attrition was not only on the Ikiwakai side, and the dissolution of the breakaway faction in 1989 resolved the organizational conflict without resolving the question of how the conflict had been managed from inside the advisory tier. The 29 confirmed deaths are a number. The number of decisions, the rooms, the flat hands on tables, the things that were said and unsaid by men with senior counselor titles, is not a number anyone has. The war lasted roughly 4 years. Across that period, the advisory layer of the Yamaguchi-gumi made some quantity of decisions that shaped which incidents happened, which were avoided, and which were allowed to appear chaotic when they were not. None of those decisions are in the record. The senior counselors who made them are, to the extent they are known at all, known by other things they did in other decades. You are getting closer to the rooms where the decisions happen, not the rooms where you find out about them afterward. The rooms themselves. What you feel right now, that's not anticipation. That's the door. 5. The wakagashira hosa, the man who keeps the machine running while the boss is away. Specific historical event, the bubble economy and the Yakuza's financial architecture. Tokyo, 1988. The economic fever that the press is calling the *Babiru Kiza, the bubble economy, has done something to the city that you can feel through the soles of your shoes on the sidewalk, outside every bank branch in Chiyoda Ward. Land values are moving at a pace that makes traditional extortion look like a savings account. You are a *wakagashira hosa*, a senior lieutenant's aide, which in practice means you are the man who executes the decisions made one tier above you and manages the information flowing up from 3 tiers below you. And right now, that information is almost entirely about real estate. The Yamaguchi-gumi, the Sumiyoshi-kai, and the Inagawa-kai, Japan's 3 largest Yakuza organizations, have all, by 1988, made substantial moves into legitimate real estate investment, construction financing, and corporate equity through a combination of front companies, cooperative financial intermediaries, and relationships with bank loan officers that have been, in several documented cases, formalized through the traditional gift-giving protocols that make a bribe look like a courtesy. You are in a conference room on the 14th floor of a building in Marunouchi. The building is not owned by the organization. The meeting is being held here because the organization's name cannot appear on a booking record. The man running the meeting is not from the organization. He is a senior loan officer from a regional bank whose main branch is in H.I., and he is wearing a suit that cost more than most of your *shatei earn in 6 months. He has a briefcase that he has not opened. He has not needed to open it because the terms of what is being discussed have already been agreed to in a different room, at a different time, and this meeting exists only to produce a handshake that can be referenced later. 3 of the 7 people at the table are from the financial world: the banker, an accountant who is being referred to only by his family name, and a man who is introduced as a development consultant, and who has a business card that lists a company address in the Cayman Islands. The remaining 4 are, in various organizational capacities, from the same world you are from. The total value of the transaction being referenced, not the transaction itself, but the transaction it will enable, is large enough that the accountant has a second briefcase for the documentation. The one detail nobody in the room has a clean answer for: what happens to the loans if the land values reverse? The penetration of Yakuza capital into Japan's bubble-era real estate market was extensively documented after the fact, most thoroughly in the Financial Supervisory Agency reports of the late 1990s that followed the bubble's collapse, and in the Diet deliberations over the non-performing loan crisis. Those accounts established that Yakuza-affiliated capital had penetrated multiple tiers of the Japanese banking system, that some financial institutions had knowingly processed transactions from criminal sources, and that the resulting non-performing loan exposure was a significant contributor to the banking crisis of the 1990s. What those accounts did not render was the meeting layer, the rooms on the 14th floor, the unopened briefcases, the development consultants with Cayman addresses. The banking crisis reports dealt in aggregate figures. The aggregate was somewhere between 5 and 10 trillion yen in Yakuza-connected non-performing loans by various estimates. What those figures did not contain was the name of the meeting that produced them. The non-performing loan crisis was addressed through a combination of regulatory intervention, bank recapitalization, and the establishment of the Resolution and Collection Corporation, a government entity created to manage distressed assets. The Organized Crime Exclusion Ordinances, enacted at the prefectural level beginning in 2011, formalized the exclusion of Yakuza-affiliated parties from financial transactions. A number of financial institutions implicated in bubble-era lending to criminal-connected entities entered into administrative settlements with the Financial Supervisory Agency. No criminal charges were brought against financial institution personnel in connection with Yakuza-linked lending during the bubble period. The loan officer from H.I., whose name is not in this account because it is not in the public record either, retired from his institution in 1997 with a full pension. And yet the capital did not disappear when the bubble did. It moved. The non-performing loan process, the RCC, the regulatory cleanup, the asset sales redistributed distressed real estate through a process that, by design, prioritized speed over provenance. Researchers who have examined the asset disposition records have found gaps. Properties whose sale records are complete but whose buyer entities dissolve within years of purchase. Properties that were restructured through holding company chains that reset the ownership trail. Properties that emerged from the cleanup process into registered ownership that bears no organizational connection to anything, except the timing. The total value of what was cleaned, moved, and resettled is not a number anyone holds in a single document. The man who sat at the 14th floor table in 1988 and did not need to open his briefcase, that man made decisions whose financial consequences are still distributing themselves through registered property in at least 4 prefectures. You were in that room. You heard what was not said. You are still in possession of that. 4. The asterisk kyodai, oyabun your boss's crisis, and the call you have to make. Decision point. Inside the 1997 Kobe earthquake aftermath and Yakuza relief operations. Kobe, January 17, 1995. It is 5:46 in the morning, and the building you are in has moved in a way that buildings are not supposed to move, a lateral lurch. A second of complete mechanical wrongness. And then the sound which is not what you expected, which is not an explosion but a sustained grinding roar that seems to come from below the street, below the city, from something underneath everything. You are a senior asterisk kyodai asterisk, a senior brother in an affiliate family of the Yamaguchi-gumi based in the Nagata ward, which is one of the hardest hit districts in what will come to be known as the Great Hanshin earthquake. 6.9 on the Richter scale. 17 seconds of primary motion, over 6,000 dead in the final count, nearly 250,000 displaced. Your organization's headquarters in Kobe's Nada ward has partially collapsed. Your asterisk Kumicho is unreachable. 3 of your asterisk shatei are unaccounted for, and the decision you are about to make within the next 4 hours, before government relief coordination has reached Nagata ward, will become, in ways you do not yet anticipate, one of the most publicly discussed actions in the modern history of the Yakuza. The Yamaguchi-gumi's immediate response to the earthquake was not organized from above. It emerged from the ward level from men like you, senior enough to move resources, with enough territorial knowledge to navigate a city where half the street signs were under rubble. By the end of January 17th, Yamaguchi-gumi affiliated operations in Nagata and Nada wards had distributed an estimated 70,000 meals. Blankets, water, diapers, baby formula, moved through informal supply chains that the organization's long-standing relationships with wholesale distribution businesses made functional before official relief infrastructure had fully deployed. The trucks that moved first through the rubble-blocked streets of Nagata were not government trucks. The men directing traffic at intersections where the signals had failed were not police officers. Residents who received supplies in those first 48 hours have been interviewed extensively by journalists and researchers, and a consistent thread in their accounts is the specificity of what they received, not generic emergency parcels, but items suited to particular needs, delivered by men who knew which street had the elderly concentration, which block had the daycare. The Yakuza earthquake relief effort became a widely circulated story, both domestically and internationally. It was covered in Japanese newspapers beginning within days of the earthquake, and has been referenced repeatedly in journalistic accounts of the organization as an illustration of the complex relationship between organized crime and civil society in Japan. The coverage was largely accurate in its description of what was distributed and when. What it rendered less clearly was the decision layer, the specific moment in those early hours when a senior asterisk kyodai determined that the organization's resources would be deployed for public relief, rather than for organizational protection, asset recovery, or territorial management, all of which were also pressing concerns in the immediate post-earthquake environment. The motivation attributed to the organization in press coverage ranged from genuine community solidarity to sophisticated public relations calculation. The men who made the decision have, in the accounts available, described it as neither. They describe it as the only thing that made sense in the moment, which is not a simple statement. The Yakuza's earthquake relief activity was not officially acknowledged by government or law enforcement as a coordinated organizational response. Individual acts of assistance were noted in community accounts. The NPA's monitoring of organized crime activity in the disaster zone focused on potential exploitation, price gouging, protection demands, territorial expansion, none of which were documented as systematic in the Kobe case. The relief activity was not cited in any prosecution or enforcement action. In subsequent years, it has been referenced in academic discussions of civil society response to disasters and in journalistic profiles of the organization. It has not been formally evaluated in any government document. The organized crime exclusion ordinances enacted beginning in 2011 do not contain a provision addressing disaster response by designated organizations. But the decision you made in those first hours to move trucks, to call in favors with the wholesale suppliers, to put your men on intersections instead of protecting your own assets, that decision produced something the organization did not plan for: trust. Specific, earned, observable trust in specific wards from specific people who received specific things at specific times. That trust became a layer of social capital that is not captured in any organizational analysis of the Yamaguchi-gumi's subsequent expansion or its resistance to post-2011 regulatory pressure. Researchers who have tried to measure it describe a persistent difference in public attitudes toward organized crime in the Kobe area compared to other major urban centers, a gap they attribute in part to those 48 hours. You made a call. You didn't know it was a call that would still be shaping something 20 years later. The rubble is gone. The ledger isn't. 3. The wakagashira headquarters, running security for the boss when someone has already made up their mind. Specific historical event: the assassination attempt on Godo Tadamasa and the FBI deal. Los Angeles, sometime in 2001. You are not in Japan. This is the part that still feels wrong. You are in a hotel in Los Angeles, California, and the man you are sitting with represents the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the conversation you are having should not be happening. And the reason it is happening is that the man you are here to protect needs a liver transplant, and the United States government has decided that need is useful. The man is Godo Tadamasa, the Kumicho or boss of the Godo-gumi, a Yamaguchi-gumi affiliate that had, by the early 2000s, established a reputation for operational aggression and financial scale that had made it, in the estimation of multiple law enforcement agencies, one of the most consequential criminal organizations in East Asia. Godo has a liver condition that is life-threatening and that cannot be adequately treated in Japan. The University of California, Los Angeles Medical Center has a transplant program. The United States does not grant visas to designated criminals. The FBI has a field office in Los Angeles. And this is the part that is, in retrospect, the most extraordinary detail: someone made a call. The arrangement, as it has been subsequently described, involved Godo providing information to the FBI regarding the activities of Yamaguchi-gumi-affiliated individuals in the United States, specifically in the areas of money laundering, West Coast real estate investment, and what the FBI documents apparently described as entertainment industry connections. In exchange, Godo received a visa and access to UCLA Medical Center, where he received a liver transplant. You were part of the security contingent that accompanied him, not as a named participant in the information exchange, but as the man whose job it was to make sure that the principal arrived and departed intact. The hospital is a hospital. Bright, institutional, the smell of industrial cleaning product, hallways wider than you expected. The man across the administrative desk when you arrived did not look at you differently than he looked at anyone else, which itself felt like a small wrongness given what you knew about why you were there. The FBI contact, and there was one, in the corridor, the second day, had the specific quality of stillness of a man who is very sure he has the leverage in a situation. The go-to FBI arrangement became public knowledge in 2008, when journalist Jake Adelstein, who had spent years covering organized crime for the Yomiuri Shimbun, published accounts of the arrangement, initially facing significant legal pressure in the process. The story was subsequently confirmed in substantial outline by multiple sources and has been referenced in academic and journalistic literature on U.S.-Japan organized crime cooperation. The FBI has not officially commented on the specific arrangement. UCLA Medical Center has confirmed that patient privacy law prohibits it from addressing individual cases. The information Godu provided has not been publicly detailed in any official document. What has been documented is the transplant itself, medical records that confirm the procedure and its timing, and the visa issuance, which was established through immigration record requests. Godu Tadamasa was excommunicated from the Yamaguchi-gumi in 2008, following public disclosure of the FBI arrangement and the consequent organizational damage to the family's operational security posture. He subsequently became a Buddhist priest, a development covered extensively in Japanese media and treated with a range of interpretive frameworks from genuine conversion to calculated reinvention. In 2010, he published a memoir. In 2011, the Tokyo District Court ordered him to pay damages in connection with an assault case. His organizational role and formal affiliation with the Yamaguchi-gumi were terminated. The FBI's gain from the arrangement, the information Godu provided, remains in the classified record. And yet the arrangement did something that neither the FBI nor the Yamaguchi-gumi planned for. It established, in concrete operational terms, that the information barrier between a designated criminal organization and a federal law enforcement agency was not absolute, that it could be crossed, under specific conditions, by a specific kind of need. Every person in the organization who learned about the Godu arrangement, and many did, the story does not stay contained, had to recalibrate their understanding of what was fixed and what was negotiable. That recalibration is not in any document, but it changed the weight of every conversation that happened in organizational leadership rooms for years afterward, because now everyone in the room knew that the man across the table might have already had a conversation you weren't in. You were in Lowe's Angels. You stood in a hospital corridor. You watched a man get a liver, and you understood, on the drive back to the hotel, that what had just happened would not be the last time something unmovable got moved. There are 2 entries left. You are not watching this anymore. You have been in these rooms. You have held things that were handed to you before anyone explained the rules. You already know what comes next is different. That's not a warning. That's just what it is. 2. The Kumicho, the boss's chair, and what it costs to sit in it. A famous figure's defining moment, Tsukasa Shinobu and the 2005 succession. You are sitting in the chair, not a throne, not a ceremonial seat, a chair, upholstered, positioned at the head of a table in a room in Kobe's Nada Ward, in the headquarters compound of the Yamaguchi-gumi, on the day in 2005 when Tsukasa Shinobu, formerly Shinoda Kenishi, was installed as the 6th-generation Kumicho of the largest criminal organization on Earth. At its peak in this period, the Yamaguchi-gumi claimed affiliates in every prefecture in Japan except 3, maintained documented international connections in the United States, South Korea, China, the Philippines, and several Pacific Island jurisdictions, and generated annual revenue that independent analysts and law enforcement estimates placed somewhere between 600 billion and 1 trillion yen per year. You are the man in that chair. You have been in every other chair. You have stood outside buildings, carried envelopes, sat 4 seats from the head of the table, made calls that could not be unmade. Every rank exists somewhere in your body like a previous injury that healed into something you carry differently than you carried it before. And now, you are at the head of the table, and the men in the room are watching the way you hold your hands. Tsukasa Shinobu had served prison time, a 6-year sentence for firearms possession, released in 2002, which meant that his formal assumption of the top position came 3 years after his release and was carefully managed by the organization's senior advisory tier during his incarceration. The transition from 5th to 6th generation had been observed closely by the NPA, by international law enforcement, and by every rival organization in Japan. The room for the formal ceremony is not large. The men present are not many. This is not a feature of the moment. It is the deliberate architecture of every consequential moment at this level. The ceremony that matters is the small one, the one that gets recorded, the one that gets photographed for the inevitable press coverage, the one that the newspapers will describe, that one is already arranged. This one, the actual one, involves specific verbal acknowledgments, specific gestures, a specific sequence of address that indicates who has pledged to what. The man who has just become Kumicho * sits with his hands at rest on the table. He does not move them unnecessarily. The one detail that no one in the room has a clean answer for, and that everyone is pretending not to be thinking about. Whether the decision to install him while law enforcement attention was at this particular pitch of intensity was the right calculation, or whether it was the only option remaining. The 6th-generation succession of the Yamaguchi-gumi was covered by Japanese media and noted in NPA and international law enforcement reporting. The installation of Tsukasa Shinobu, a man who had served federal prison time and whose criminal record was a matter of public documentation, as the head of Japan's largest organized crime family, was itself a public event in the sense that his name was known, his history was reported, and his designation as a criminal organization leader triggered formal international notifications under existing frameworks. What the coverage did not render was the transition period, the 3 years between his release and his formal installation, during which the 6th-generation framework was negotiated across an organization of tens of thousands of affiliated individuals. The men who managed that negotiation, at the saiko-komon and senior * wakagashira * levels, are not named in the coverage. The specific terms of the organizational commitments made during that period are not documented publicly, but their shape is visible in the reorganization of affiliate structures that NPA analysts noted in the 2002-2005 period. Tsukasa Shinobu was arrested again in 2005 on assault charges and sentenced to an additional 6 years, serving a significant portion of his early tenure as 6th-generation * Kumicho from prison, a situation the organization navigated through its deputy leadership structure. He was released in 2011. The Japanese government's organized crime exclusion ordinances, fully enacted by 2011, created a new legal environment that significantly complicated organizational operations, particularly in real estate, finance, and the management of front businesses. In 2015, a major factional split within the Yamaguchi-gumi produced the breakaway coup Yamaguchi-gumi, a rupture that multiple analysts characterized as the most significant structural disruption the organization had experienced since the Yama-ichi War. The NPA designated the coup Yamaguchi-gumi as a separate criminal organization in 2015. But the chair is what you carry, not the title, not the ceremony. The chair, the specific quality of being the person that the room orients around, the person whose hands everyone else is reading. Every man who sat in one of the other chairs in that room had spent years learning to read the man at the head of the table, to anticipate, to calibrate, to understand the difference between what was said and what was meant. The moment you move to that chair, all of that training, every year of reading other people inverted. Now you are the thing being read. Every expression, every silence, every way you hold your hands becomes organizational policy before you've said a word. Tsukasa Shinobu held that position from prison, from the compound in Nara, from wherever the asterisk Kumicho exists at a given moment for over a decade. The 2015 split, the exclusion ordinances, the international pressure, the internal politics of an organization spanning 33 prefectures, all of it oriented around that chair. The weight of that is not expressible as a number, but the 2015 split involved somewhere between 5 and 13,000 affiliated individuals choosing a different table. That is not a small number of people deciding that the man at the head of the table was not, any longer, the right calculation. 1. The asterisk Kumicho in the last room. What happens when there is nowhere left to move? Decision point. The Yamaguchi-gumi split, 2015. And what it means to be the organization when the organization breaks. Kobe, August 2015. You have been the 6th generation asterisk Kumicho of the Yamaguchi-gumi for a decade, nominally. Some of that from a prison cell, some of it from the compound in Nara Ward, some of it from whatever the space is called when you are the head of something, and the thing is in motion in ways you cannot fully observe. The men who are about to leave have not yet left. This is the last moment before the break, the last meeting that contained everyone, before the faction led by Inao Kunitoshi formalized its separation, and took with it what the NPA would later estimate at between 8 and 13,000 affiliated individuals, roughly a third of the organization's total strength. The room you are sitting in is the same kind of room you have sat in at every rank. Table, chairs. The specific quality of air that develops in spaces where consequential things are decided. The men across from you have been in this organization, in some cases, for longer than you have. They know the hierarchy. They built pieces of it, and they are about to leave it, which means they have made a calculation about you specifically, about whether the organization under your leadership is still the right organization to be in. You can see that calculation in the way they are sitting. Not hostile, decided. The sources of the 2015 split are documented across multiple analytical accounts and include disputes over tribute rate increases that had compressed affiliate revenue in the post-exclusion ordinance environment, tensions over territorial management in urban areas where traditional revenue streams had been legally constricted, and in some accounts, personal and factional disputes within the senior leadership tier that had been building since the post-2005 reorganization. The men sitting across from you have specific grievances, and you know what they are, because you have been managing them or failing to manage them for 3 years. The tribute rate is a real issue. Enough affiliate families had seen their revenue compress enough that the upward payment had become, in some cases, the difference between operational solvency and deficit. A man can endure a great deal if the math is working. When the math stops working, the loyalty calculus changes. There are 7 men in the room. 4 of them will be on the other side of this split. You can tell which 4 by the way they have positioned themselves. Not dramatically, not with any visible aggression, but with the slight physical withdrawal of people who have already made a decision and are waiting for the meeting to confirm it. The one question that has no answer is whether anything you can say in the next 30 minutes changes those 4 men's math. The Yamaguchi-gumi split received substantial coverage in the Japanese press and in international media. The NPA's designation of the breakaway Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi as a separate criminal organization in October 2015 formalized the rupture in official terms. Subsequent academic and journalistic analysis has examined the split's causes with considerable rigor. The revenue compression argument is well documented, the factional tensions are partially documented, and the broader context of the exclusion ordinance's effect on organizational economics is the subject of multiple analytical papers. What the coverage and analysis rendered less completely was the specific internal meeting, The room before the split formalized, where people who had been in the same organization for decades sat across from each other and enacted the end of that. The human geometry of that moment, who was sitting where, what was said, what nobody said, is not in the record. It is in the room, and the room is closed. The split was processed, in official terms, through the NPA's designation framework. The Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi was formally designated as a *shatei boryokuden* in October 2015, creating two separate designated criminal organizations from what had been one. Subsequent enforcement activity was directed at both organizations independently. In 2017, a further split produced the Ninkyo Yamaguchi-gumi as a third designated entity. Law enforcement characterized the fragmentation as a positive development. Smaller, more competitive organizations are, in the enforcement model, more vulnerable to targeted pressure and less capable of the kind of coordinated large-scale operation that a unified organization can mount. Academic opinion on this characterization is mixed. The Yamaguchi-gumi, under continued sixth-generation leadership, remained the largest of the three resulting organizations. Its membership, by NPA estimates, had declined significantly from its pre-split peak by the time of the most recent available reporting. And yet you are still in the chair. That is the thing that doesn't close. Not the split is historical now, documented, designated, processed through the official framework. Not the revenue compression, not the factional tensions, not the exclusion ordinances. Those are all on the record in various degrees of resolution. What is not on the record is what it means to be the organization when the organization breaks. To be the name, Yamaguchi-gumi *, sixth generation, when the thing the name refers to has shed a third of itself. Every rank you held before this one was defined by its relationship to the rank above and the rank below. You served upward and you managed downward, and the structure gave you location. At the top, there is no rank above. The structure runs only downward, tens of thousands of affiliated individuals in a hierarchy that terminates in you. When a third of that structure separates, the hierarchy doesn't become smaller. It becomes a different shape. And you are still at the top of it in the same chair, in the same compound in not a ward, in the same kind of room where the decisions are made that don't appear in the records. The Yamaguchi-gumi was founded in 1915, 110 years before this countdown ends. It has survived the Second World War, the American occupation, the economic miracle, the asset bubble, the crash, the Bōtaihō*, 4 generational successions, the Yama-ichi War, the earthquake, the FBI arrangement, the exclusion ordinances, and the 2015 split. The men who built it started where you started, outside a building, holding something that wasn't theirs yet, waiting for someone who may or may not arrive. Every rank between that moment and the chair is a version of the same question. Who are you responsible to, and who are you responsible for, and what happens when those two things pull in opposite directions? You have been every rank in this organization for the length of this video. You stood outside the pachinko parlor. You carried the envelope. You sat 4 seats from the head of the table. You heard the handshake that didn't need a briefcase opened. You made the call in the earthquake. You sat in the Lowe's Angels Hospital corridor. You moved to the head of the table. The man who built the Yamaguchi-gumi into the largest criminal organization on Earth is a historical figure now, documented and studied. The man sitting in the chair in 2015, watching 4 of 7 men withdraw into their decision, that man is still present tense, in a way that the historical record doesn't fully accommodate. The chair is still occupied. The compound in not a ward is still there. The hierarchy still runs downward from one point to tens of thousands of individuals in 33 prefectures. And the question you walked into at the beginning of this video, the one about the man who hadn't blinked in 40 seconds, is still the same question. Who is he looking at? What is he waiting for you to do? You already know the answer. You've known it since the pachinko parlor. If you've been in every room with me tonight from the street corner in Osaka to the compound in Kobe, then you already know this channel isn't going anywhere. Subscribe, because the next one starts the same way this one did, in the middle of something already